Okay, guys, it is 1:30, so just after 1:30, I think we should get started. I want to thank everybody for attending the Teaching Certificate Program for this year's meeting. It's a program that we're always very proud of. We try to pick topics that are relevant to all of you, and I appreciate your endurance in a great week and sort of bringing us into the home stretch here. I do have a podium announcement because this is a SAM session, so I am obligated to read this out loud to you. Sorry. Attention, faculty of a SAM using a paper and pencil test. Prior to the beginning of the presentation, please read to the following the audience. If you are planning to take this course for self-assessment module credit, please check in with the staff at the table near the door of this meeting room to verify your SAM's registration and receive your test documentation. Clearly print your name and email address in the test document. Be sure to hand it in at the location specified at the end of the paper test document. To receive SAM credit, you must complete the test on site. There is no minimum score requirement, but you do have to answer every question. You must also evaluate your course using the AUR online evaluation site, which is provided approximately 6 weeks after the meeting. A SAM certificate, your test results, correct answers for the test, and a list of references will be sent to you. SAM credit must be claimed no later than November 11th, 2017. That's all I have for you there. So, welcome. I do want to get, the two topics that we've picked this year are faculty development as the major topic and mentorship as the other. So, I'll just do a quick intro of our first speaker, who's also our keynote speaker. Dr. Joseph Merlino, he's coming here as a highly recommended individual from our Debbie Reed. When I reached out to her about this topic, it was like a knee-jerk reflex. We have somebody, don't book anybody, I have the person for you. So, founding vice president for faculty and affairs and professional development at SUNY Brooklyn, and a professor in the colleges of medicine and health-related professions and the School of Public Health, trained as a psychoanalyst and has held several leadership posts in the administrative psychiatry. And Dr. Merlino is here to speak to us on building a faculty development program from scratch. So please, a round of applause for Dr. Merlino.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much to the AUR for inviting me and for my colleague, Dr. Reed, for thinking of me. I can tell you that this is a topic that's very important and close to my heart. I was recruited to start this program at SUNY Downstate just over 2.5 years ago. We didn't have a formal program for faculty development, and the president at that time had asked me to come on board and start one up. So when I talk about starting a program from scratch, that's exactly what we did. These are the objectives, which I think you have. I have nothing to disclose. And I wanted to start by talking about why faculty development and to give you sort of what the burning platform is. There's what's been called a looming crisis in academic medicine today. The AAMC published an article a few years back that cited this statistic, which was somewhat alarming, that 25% of faculty are considering leaving academic medicine, and in fact 14% of those faculty had seriously considered leaving their own medical universities within the prior year. And I still have nothing to disclose. And I still have no objectives. There we go. So, what is the problem? Why do so many people want to leave academic medicine? And there are a number of reasons that the survey that the AAMC conducted revealed. And largely it had to do with a feeling of disconnectedness of the faculty from the very institution where they worked. And you can see some of the particulars here: dissatisfaction with the workplace, culture that wasn't supportive and conducive to what they felt was very important. They felt unrelated to the school or the school's administration. They felt that there was a moral disconnect between the values that brought them to academia or to clinical medicine and to the organization with which they worked. They felt a lack of engagement. And let me go back to this for a second. You know, why is that important? When you think about losing such a significant portion, or the potential for losing such a significant portion of your faculty, that should sound alarms if you're in a leadership position at your organization. And the people that are more likely to leave are people that are younger, more junior, and more interested in pursuing leadership positions. So you're losing the very vitality with which we would hope we would be recruiting and retaining in our institutions, in our universities. And if you're a bean counter and you're concerned, forget about the noble reasons about why you're concerned about this problem. Just think about it in terms of fiscal issues, which more, unfortunately, people are solely concerned about these days. And if you're losing faculty, and we're projecting on the order of, I have the number here and I forgot it for the second, but we're thinking of losing 60 to 90,000 physicians over the next decade. So if you've got a faculty that are thinking of leaving, if you've got a number of positions that are wooing them over because there's going to be such a shortage of physicians, it really behooves you to think about what can you do to create programs to take care of the very people that you need. And especially if the administrators look at what the costs are to replace faculty, and these are just some average numbers, again, from the AAMC. I assume radiology would be somewhere in the middle of these numbers, maybe higher, I don't really know for sure. But estimates of something like 5% of the academic medical school's budget goes towards replacement costs of faculty. And that has to do with decreased productivity, overburdening the remaining faculty, costs of headhunters and advertisements and searches, lost time and productivity, et cetera. So if you want to make a case for building a faculty development office, I'm sort of jumping ahead for a second, think about it just purely on the numbers side, because everybody's about evidence outcomes, right? And data-driven decision-making. Think about what it costs at your organization to replace a faculty member, and take a look at what turnover might be, or what surveys might indicate at your particular facility about faculty thinking about leaving. And you might have the justification to convince the people that control your budget to perhaps give you the dollars you might need to start such a program. So, and the other thing that I didn't mention, and I should, is the whole issue of wellness. You know, when we talk about faculty feeling disengaged, morally disconnected, et cetera, you have to think about a couple of other statistics. One of them being the rate of burnout in medicine these days goes from a conservative number of about 35% by the AMA to figures as high as 50+% by the people that conduct surveys using the benchmark research instrument, the Maslow inventory. So you're talking about burnout that's driven by the very factors that we in faculty development hope to address. Has to do with dealing with work inefficacy, lack of autonomy, loss of meaning at work, home work, home life balance, kinds of issues that we deal with as sort of a bread and butter topics for faculty development. The other alarming statistic that points to the crisis here is the suicide rate with physicians. The suicide rate for physicians in the United States, we lose something like on the order of over 300 to 400 doctors a year to suicide. The suicide rate amongst male MDs is 1.5 times that of the average male population. And for women physicians, it's 2.25 times the average for women. And for residents, for those of you concerned about residents, we have a rate of major depression for residents, 28%. It's 4 times their peer-matched non-MD comparison group. So these are a lot of numbers and a lot of statistics that really point to the fact that there's trouble afoot in academic medicine, and there needs to be something done about it. And I'm here to say that in my opinion, I think that faculty development programs are part of that solution, and I think quite a cost-effective part of that solution. So what is faculty development? You know, there's some confusion about what do we mean when we talk about faculty development. And by the way, most medical schools in the country have offices related to so-called faculty affairs, academic affairs, et cetera. But only about 20% of them really have to do with professional development of their faculty. So when we talk about faculty development and faculty affairs, I'm talking about the broad range of activities that have to do with renewing and assisting faculty in all of their roles. So it's a rather, diffuse term, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. It really has to do with what the individual culture of your institution is in terms of what kind of programs you decide you want to put together to be helpful to your faculty. But it's really all about doing the things that are necessary to restore the sense of purpose, meaning, and vitality of your faculty. Anybody that has the pleasure of working in faculty development or faculty affairs is akin to sort of a Santa Claus. I've worked in administrative psychiatry all my career, and I was the taskmaster. Productivity, valuations, terminations, all that kind of stuff. People saw you coming, they headed for the hills. When I walk down the hall now, it's people saying, hello, how are you, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because I'm going out giving things to people. I'm not demanding something from them. I'm doing something, hopefully, with the organization for them that they didn't have before. Now, why am I doing this again? Sometimes it goes forward and backwards with the same buttons. It's very confusing to me. So these are some other reasons why faculty development offices are important. Certainly, education in and of itself is very different when I was a medical student in 75 to 78, than what it is today when I'm teaching medical students. I can't even remember. It's so different now. When I ask them about the textbooks, they look at me like, "What's that?" So the whole field of education has changed, and one of the main things and the main priorities of faculty, of course, is teaching. And what's one of the least things faculty are trained typically to do? It's to teach. So faculty development office is one of the main priorities, of course, is an educational priority. But there are many others. Our population is much more educated now with media and other kinds of things that we as educators need to be aware of. And then there are all these other issues that I alluded to earlier: work-life balance, what patients and families know already when they come to see you, increasing workload, the overcommitment of the underrepresented faculty who gets picked on to be on everything because they're underrepresented faculty. And what happens to that underrepresented faculty? Well, they're suddenly represented on every committee in your organization, and what happens? That individual person doesn't have time to teach, doesn't have time to do her research, et cetera. So what happens to her career development? Her career development gets quite diffuse and quite diluted, and sort of it's an irony that the very thing you're trying to promote, you wind up losing because you're utilizing that underrepresented faculty so much. The demands for scholarly productivity, the competition for grants, new pedagogical methods, et cetera. There's a vast area of information that we as educators need to be exposed to that a faculty development office can help to provide. This is what I mentioned before about teaching. Paradoxically, it's one of the central responsibilities we don't always pay enough attention to. There's the individual and institutional level, of course. We don't only want to we do, of course, want to make the teacher the best teacher we can make the teacher, but we also want to do what we can to transform the culture of the organization so that it can truly be an effective teaching organization. So there are both individual and institutional levels that the faculty development office is going to need to take a look at. The elements, if you look up the AAMC and you see what what they consider the core developmental or the core elements of a comprehensive program, it's largely these four areas. So professional development in terms of helping faculty get through promotion and tenure kinds of situations, instructional development, which I've mentioned, leadership development. How do you help faculty become leaders in developing career, developing new courses, scholarly evaluations, et cetera? And then changing the organization to one where it really, the organization not only recognizes but respects and values the faculty's contribution towards teaching, mentoring, and his or her own faculty development. All too often, that's one of the things that's not on the evaluation sheet for the faculty member. The productivity is, number of patients seen is, et cetera, but how many hours are you spending on your own faculty development? You don't kind of get what we used to call release time in high school to do that. It's an add-on kind of thing. So what happens? You keep adding on to your workday, and then it starts interfering with work-life balance. And then you get other kinds of crises and conflicts that result from that, which lead to the disillusionment that leads to the dissatisfaction that causes faculty to want to leave academic medicine. Now again, it has a mind of its own, I'm telling you this thing. One of the things that we did at our place is we developed a website so that we could put a lot of information that faculty could simply click on to see what's going on in terms of upcoming events, but also it became a sort of a one-stop shopping place to get the faculty handbook, to get the policies and procedures on promotion and tenure, et cetera. So we found that helpful. Other functions of faculty affairs offices, of course, are to work as an assistant, if you will, to the deans of your organization. At Downstate, we have 5 schools, and each of them has their own dean. And my position is not at the dean level. I'm a vice president for administration, responsible for faculty affairs and faculty development. So that's one of the inherent tensions, which I'll talk about a little bit later, that comes into play, because once you start, decentralizing the faculty development responsibilities out of the individual college or school, it creates some tensions between the deans and the person in this role, like me, that you need to be able to navigate, which is why being a psychoanalyst can sometimes be helpful. And one of the things that got me the position, I have no doubt. Also, faculty management issues and conflict, that was a joke, by the way. A conflict resolution is important. Having an open door policy so that faculty can simply drop in a confidential manner and get, your take on a particular situation and advice as to where they should go to follow up with that. And then another responsibility that these offices have are in terms of key leadership and faculty searches. I mean, my office is responsible for coordinating the senior academic searches, and since I've been there in 2.5 years, we've done it now we're doing our 3rd dean. We did the College of Medicine, College of Health-Related Professions, and now we're doing the College of Nursing dean replacement. So that's 3 deans in 2.5 years. I think something like 6 chairs. The president was replaced, but we didn't have anything to do with that. That was controlled by Albany. But my point is, there's been a lot of administrative turnover in a very short period of time, which is kind of more typical than atypical these days in academic medicine. Okay, so faculty recruitment, retention, and development, of course, are key issues. And again, the Faculty Affairs Office has a lot to do with helping in that regard. And I like this, the AAMC, who's been tremendously helpful to me in starting the program at Downstate, has a group for faculty affairs which started in 2006 that meets at each of the AAMC meetings, and then we have our own leadership meeting once a year as well. And that serves as a wonderful support for people involved at the leadership levels of faculty affairs. You can go there and get mentoring, which I certainly did, and there's a real willingness to share tools that have worked in the past to help you going forward. And I liked what they said in their mission, that that the purpose of faculty affairs was to build and sustain faculty vitality. And I think that really sums it up. If you can really focus on the vitality of the faculty and do whatever you can to assist with that, I think we're really doing a tremendous service. It is resource intensive, or at least it's alleged to be resource intensive, and by that it means to get your faculty to participate, they have to leave something else that they might otherwise be doing. So if they were assigned a clinic, they're leaving the clinic, et cetera. Or if they were teaching a class and they needed to come to this, they'd be coming to this. So there's a tension there as well about how do you provide the support and the encouragement for your faculty so that they can have the time to actually attend faculty development events. And that, again, is one of the inherent tensions you have to work out. And in order to be successful in that, you really need the buy-in and the support of your senior academic leadership, whether you have a provost model or a dean or your university president or whatever. But if they're on board and they make it quite known how important this is, then hopefully your dean or your chairs will provide time so that a faculty member can go and attend to the kind of activities that help him or her to advance in their career, recognizing that the more you make that available, the more likely you are to have a professionally satisfied faculty member who's more likely to stay. And when they're taking a recruit around, you're more likely to be able to successfully recruit faculty if the culture is one in which your own development is valued and nurtured and rewarded. But that's a huge lift. And to get deans to be able to carve out time in your schedule away from teaching or clinical work really requires a pull and push that, for me, still these days at Downstate is an ongoing battle. One of the ways we tried to deal with that is initially we did our development programs. For example, our seminars, we had them twice a day. We did it once a month. We would do one around lunchtime and then one at the end of the day. It was exactly the same program in the hopes that faculty could attend one or the other. In addition, we videotaped them, or whatever the modern term is for that, digitally recorded them, and put them on our YouTube page so that faculty who weren't able to attend could actually watch it from their computer at home or in their office if they had a free half hour or hour to actually watch the seminar. But you do need, in addition to time away from clinical and teaching duties, some monetary support. Now, it doesn't need to be exhaustive. I mean, we did ours on a pretty much what I considered a shoestring budget. It came out to about $50,000 a year that provided for largely refreshments, lunches. I also started a wine and cheese quarterly reception for faculty, which was popular and remains popular. So some of the money to go to that, to actually get people to come out of their cocoons and their silos, to actually mix and meet other faculty. We've had faculty that don't know faculty from other departments within the same school, let alone between schools, although we're located in the same building. So this provided an opportunity for people to meet and mix and to share ideas. We also did a similar thing with poster sessions where people could put up the work that they're doing so that all the schools could see what each other's doing, and maybe collaborations could occur as a result from that. So it requires some money to do refreshments and to bring in outside speakers. Largely for the first few years, we used internal speakers, which didn't cost us anything. But if you want to bring in a speaker from outside on a particular topic, it does cost a little bit of money, so you need some money for that. And personnel, initially I didn't have any, now I have two. I have an assistant and sort of assistant secretary type position. So these require some money as well. How are we on time? 5 minutes, okay. So let me go fast. So how do you plan your program? I moved across the street from clinical to academia. For me, I thought it was going to be a huge lift, and in some ways it was. It's a very different world, but there were some real high hopes from faculty because they didn't have such a program before. It's important to early on to have some successes because you want people to get to know who you are. And what I did early on was I did a walking listening tour. I went around and met as many faculty and leadership as I could and just asked them about faculty needs, and I sort of made a mental list and wrote notes down afterwards. That did two things. It helped me figure out what the important areas in need of help were, and it also helped me identify who are the people I don't think I'm going to ask for help because they're clearly not into this, as well as the people who were really jumping out of their shoes because they really wanted to help, like Deborah Reed, and really wanted to get involved in this. So then you started to figure out who you're going to ask to be your steering committee or your advisory groups. Okay, this is one of the things we did is we broke down silos between administration, or we're working on, between administration and faculty, between the basic scientists and the clinicians, and then between the different schools and colleges and the faculty. And faculty affairs can do this as well. We did a SWOT analysis, and you can do your own. This is just what mine was. But we went through a lot of change, so there were some suspicions about, was I just a president's guy who was there to satisfy a requirement, or was I really going to do something? So there were some of these initial things. The turf battles and politics between schools, if they feel that you might be stepping on their toes in their colleges, which was not my intent. The other thing that was very helpful for us is we did the AAMC faculty forward survey, which gave us a lot of information about where your particular school's needs are, and I'll show you this really quickly. But when I looked at all the data I got from my walking and talking and listening tour, there were three areas that needed help. One was faculty development seminars, and this turned out to be our monthly ongoing series of presentations that my steering committee helped select what the topics would be. The second were special interest groups, where there were, groups of people that had a special interest that you could bring them together so they would work together, brown bag lunch kinds of things. And then we provided whatever support they needed. And then the whole issue of faculty mentoring, which we actually got some dollars for, brought in outside coaches to help develop a cadre of senior academics who served as mentors, who then each mentored two other faculty members. And we have a monthly meeting for the mentors that get together, and we do faculty development for the mentors, and we review their progress with their mentees. This is just a faculty forward survey, and I'm not going to go through this except to show you the kinds of data it provides you with, and you'll get a test on this later. But it does give you, at the end, it gives you a list that breaks down not only by your school, but by your department in terms of where your top priorities are, in terms of what you're really doing well, and where you have opportunities for improvement, i.e. you need to do better. And that gives you something you can actually meet with your faculty about and get them to help you problem solve together. Rather than top down, it's bottom up, but it really gives you a leg up. And again, I'm not going to go through all this, but they give you a lot of material. So with the faculty development seminars, we were focusing on teaching excellence and overall career satisfaction. So we brought people in to talk about work-life balance, how do you teach to millennials, et cetera, a number of topics that were of interest to faculty. Special interest groups, we have a series of them. One of them meets every 3 months where we get together with the new faculty that are onboarded who meet with older faculty, i.e. who had been there longer faculty, over lunch. And it just is a way of getting to know somebody and to talk about issues like, well, what health insurance did you think was better, et cetera. So those kinds of things, and it's a way of welcoming somebody in. Down to, we have underrepresented faculty, a special interest group. We have one for research. We have one for people who are afraid to write. They can't get over the inhibition of putting pen to paper. So we have one of those. So whatever the faculty feels they need, we help support them to do that. And then the last one, as I mentioned, was faculty mentoring. And from that, we have both a faculty mentoring program, and then we also started, and we have about 50 plus faculty involved in that right now. And then we started a leadership program with one of our graduate schools in New York City, who come to the campus once every 2 weeks for 2.5 hours, and we have a cadre of 20 faculty who are working towards developing their leadership abilities. And that group broke down into 5 smaller groups, each working on a project, And they use the topics that the leadership program is teaching them, finance, conflict resolution, et cetera, each 2 weeks. And in between, they work together as a group. And by the end of the cycle, which is a 20-week cycle, they actually have a project that they're going to present to the faculty at a town hall meeting. The purpose of that is to empower the faculty. Let's see what else I wanted to show you. Branding is very important. This thing on the top where you see Office of Faculty Affairs and Professional Development, we did that on all of our posters and all of our emails and all of our signs, so that just like when you buy a product in the store, you start to recognize it. And people think Faculty Affairs has been there for 100 years. It's been there 2.5 years. We also established an award. It didn't cost much at all. It cost about $50 for a trophy, and we got 6 trophies. We established 6 teaching awards that the faculty give the faculty each year, and we do that at one of our wine and cheese receptions. And then we invite faculty and students to play instruments for background as well. It turns into a quite nice environment that's not that expensive to do. As you could see, you're getting your faculty to vote with their feet. This is actually a real picture of our faculty. It's not shopped. Visible leadership. Whoever it is that's in charge of your faculty affairs office, if you set one up, needs to be visible, needs to be at presentations, needs to introduce herself or himself as faculty affairs, needs to attend the dean's meetings, senior leadership meetings, etc. And then I mentioned before about the open door policy as well as the web presence. We also did media things that we handed out. And we have a schedule that gets posted and also put online that shows all the different topics. And these were just, you can't read it, but different topics that we had over the course of it. These are some of our special interest groups. And you also want to focus, again, depending on what the need is of your particular program, you're going to focus on the beginning career faculty, middle or end, or everybody. And you see, in terms of this developmental stage model, depending on which cohort you're looking at, their drivers, the main thing that they're focused on is different. So the beginning faculty, the new faculty, your junior, so-called junior faculty, their goal is security. They want to make sure that they can keep their job and they can work towards tenure. Your middle faculty, 30s to 50s, they're concerned about success. They want to continue publishing, be known as excellent teachers. And then your end of career, people in my age group, we're focusing on significance. We want to make sure that when we leave, we feel we really did something significant and that we made a mark in some way. So depending on which group you're focusing on, what your goals might be for your development program might also differ. Mentoring we're going to talk about later. The double AMC, I highly recommend it to you if you're not using it already. They have all kinds of tools. This is just one on mentoring, but they've got lots of stuff there. Obstacles to faculty success, the biggest one is time. How do you get your faculty to be able to say no and not be punished for it? How do you get them to be able to say yes if it's going to be something that they can spin into, in a positive sense, something that helps them move their career forward? So if they're going to be given an assignment, can that assignment turn into perhaps a poster presentation or a scientific meeting presentation or a paper publication, which would then go towards their promotion and their tenure, rather than something that sits, they spend 2 hours doing and they don't really get any credit for it and nothing to show for it, which is lost time for that faculty member. So these are one of the issues. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you need the buy-in from your leadership. Inadequate feedback, recognition, and rewards, you want to make sure you tend to that. Resources is an issue all of us deal with. Work-life integration is an important topic that you need to continue to address in your programs. Faculty success, we focus on the individual, but of course we've got to also focus on the institution. One of the things we did at Downstate is our president at the time created a president's task force on campus culture, and that really helped us bring together people to find out what are the hot button issues that are going on campus that might not be rising to the surface, but nevertheless need to be addressed so that faculty vitality and student wellness, et cetera, can be addressed. Leadership, very, very important, and I find all too often that people that are in leadership positions either don't know how to lead, and people that want to be leaders don't have sufficient support and training. So we created a leadership program in order to do just that. And of course, the competencies of the individual are important. You need to, of course, know your institution, but that you're going to know better than I. And responsibilities of faculty affairs offices, more and more across the country, they're moving from the sort of college-based, department-based, to more university-based, decentralized, centralized kinds of foci, because then the office really knows the landscape of the larger picture. But inherent in that, as I alluded to earlier, is the tension that you have to be wary of in terms of the individual dean of the particular school doesn't want to feel like her or his toes are getting stepped on, which is not the intent. It has to be a partnership. But there again, you need the buy-in of the dean and the organization to truly invest in that partnership. If you've got somebody that's hell-bent on keeping daylight from coming into their school, then you've got an issue that has to be addressed, and hopefully you can get the assistance of your provost or your president to assist you if that is a problem. Hopefully it's not. What makes a program successful? So metrics that you might want to look at are promotion and tenure rates, turnover rates, faculty satisfaction surveys, your CME evaluations after your individual programs, the attendance, how many people are coming. Teacher skills and learner outcomes is something that we hope to move towards, but is an important one. And then something like the faculty survey, the AAMC survey, has a different name now, I don't remember what it is, but they do that, and it's for a fee, but you can do that every 3 or 4 years, and that gives you very meaningful data as well. Sort of on time, a little late, sorry. So. I think the number is increasing, and the reasons are some of the ones that I mentioned, largely a sense of loss of autonomy over what you're responsible for doing that creates a sense of disconnectedness and a loss of meaning, and not sort of seeing a way out of that. And that just sort of compounds upon itself. And you hear that, I mean, just anecdotally, you hear it more and more if you walk through the halls. One of the things we were surprised about when we did the AAMC survey is that our faculty actually said that they were satisfied, which was very surprising because when you listen to the underground, it was quite the opposite. And what often happens is the underground are the fewer but louder ones. So one of the tasks that I then found myself having to fulfill was I had to challenge that and say, well, I hear what you're saying, but that's not what your department faculty are saying. Here's the data. And then it's helped to sort of shut down the minority noisemakers and empower the sort of more vocal majority, pardon the political parallels there, and sort of gives them a reason. Because if you get just the disparaging negative naysayers are the only ones that constantly are heard, it creates this din of reality that isn't always the case. That said, there is a serious problem in academic medicine as the statistics show. I mean, one of the things that grew out of our program that became campus-wide now is a campus wellness program. So we celebrated Campus Wellness Week, I think it was the week before last, where each day there was a different topic, and then in the morning or afternoons there were massage, acupuncture, yoga, kinds of things that were done to demonstrate some of the things that faculty could do to take care of themselves, which is important. Again, if the focus is on, you know, we're really good at taking care of other people. We're not, it's a truism. We're not so good at taking care of ourselves. And if you've got somebody on campus charged with that, it's more likely to get done than if we're left to tend to do it for ourselves. It's not going to get done. So. Yeah, 4 times the major depression rate, residents.
So the thing that maybe you clarified for me is
right. This is a major depressive episode.
Okay, so they're not classified as major depressive.
No.
It's just a small percent of the population.
Yeah, and in fact, the study showed that if, I don't remember it exactly, I think it was something like as little as 3 CBT sessions cut that number by 50%.
Okay, so these are not individuals who necessarily have lifetime
No.
as concentrated on these medications. These are individuals with certain interactions with their neighbor.
Yes, that was the implication.
And so it's a change in the environment that could possibly improve.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that we don't tend to is the amount of stress that we put not only ourselves, but hey, it was good for me, it's good for you, right? So what we put our trainees through and what our trainees put our medical students through, the intensity of that stress is very great. In fact, when you look at the number of people who actually do leave or are dissatisfied, it's more typically the younger ones and the ones who are newer in the career.
And the suicide rates, is that if they were to have their perspective of the suicide among physicians as well as those in training,
Yes.
did they have an underlying mood disorder, or were they people who had depressive episodes that then led to suicide?
I don't know the answer to that. There was an overall number, and they compared in general, looking at the medical community of learners compared to non-medical, and the alarming rate was what I had mentioned, 1.5 times for male physicians and 2.25 times for female physicians.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, let me just get our next speaker set here. Most of you know Dr. Carolyn Meltzer, neuroradiologist, nuclear medicine physician, 17 years of NIH funding for her work in applying novel advanced imaging strategies to better understand brain structure-function relationships in normal aging, late life depression, and Alzheimer's disease. Joined Emory School of Medicine in 2005, serves as the chair, Department of Radiology and Imaging Sciences, Associate Dean for Research. This could go on and on, Carolyn, so I'm not going to do that to you. I do want to show this, though. Her other life, a very, very accomplished photographer. I stole some of those from your website, I'm sorry, but that's her in action on the right. They come with the images she has on her website. Very gifted. So included in 7 publications, more than 50 exhibitions around the US and Europe. So you should visit those websites. They're really, really beautiful pieces that she has there. So Dr. Meltzer is going to be talking about implementing faculty development in a large program.
Thank you so much. Well, delighted to be here. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
of course.
that kind introduction. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit about our experience at Emory. It's going to be hard to follow that wonderful keynote, but some of the points made will actually be a nice foundation for what we're going to talk about. My financial disclosures, I work for a lot of organizations you're all familiar with, and sometimes my travel is reimbursed. I also work with the SCARD Consulting Service. I guess I'm a special government employee, which may not have a good connotation right now, on the NIH Advisory Council, and occasionally do some medical expert testimony. So, you know, when I think about the most satisfying and the most important part of my job as chair, it is investing in people. And that's where I get a lot of satisfaction, and you know, we have a sort of constantly learning environment about how to do this. But it really is critical. We are a talent field. We are not making widgets. We are growing talent. And the strength of our field overall is dependent on this. And it certainly is a time of most rapid change. So having everybody at the table, having people have the skills to be adaptable when times change, and to think innovatively and to get those folks together to nurture diverse thinking, diverse teams, build our bench strength of talent in leadership. And we've also more recently in the last few years worked very intensively on succession planning for leadership positions in our department. So it was a little bit of a barren landscape to start. The department was 11, 12 years ago when I came, it was a little bit of a more informal mentoring environment. So you really were encouraged to kind of find your own mentors, and there weren't structured programs. It was very classic for how departments were at that time. So we really had to build upon this. And we thought about how to build the foundations of professional development across the department. And it started with the most basics, the really basic part of just having annual faculty evaluations. So I remember asking someone, so who does, which division is this person in, which research? Well, they kind of work with so-and-so, and they kind of work with so-and-so. Well, but which division are they in? And, well, who does their annual evaluation? And the response was, what annual evaluation? So, we may think of this as an onerous process, something we have to do every year, but having a faculty evaluation process that is, for which is emphasized the individual faculty members' goals, the resources they want, their short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, what they want to discuss, doing a deep dive in their career. I'm not saying that's the only time of the year you sit and talk with an individual about their career goals, but it is a forced time to do it for everyone and to make sure people have mentoring, that they're getting the right support. Otherwise, you may be more likely to hear from those who are more comfortable walking in your office, and others may fall through the cracks and feel like their desires and aspirations are not being prioritized. We also then spent a lot of time developing a faculty-oriented academic infrastructure. And this included having statistical help, having research nurses, having a department scientific review committee, having media support, having the things available that faculty needed, particularly to do their academic work, and some guidelines of how to get started in academic work, most importantly. We also realized that expectations when you start are really important, and having a very detailed recruitment and onboarding process was particularly important for people to know where to find things, that there's an orderly process. We recruit about 15 to 25 faculty a year. We're a very large system. So to reinvent the wheel every time or let everybody kind of figure it out. So when I started, I had the wrong keys. I hadn't started out. I was using somebody else's long distance code, so they probably got some flack about that. Everything was haphazard. I wasn't signed up for retirement benefits for about 6 months. So just going through everything more systematized made people feel like, okay, we welcome you. We're now going to guide you through not only finding the bathrooms and the dictaphone, but other things you will need to navigate a new system. And as was mentioned by a keynote speaker, the needs for more detailed faculty development programs are different at different stages. And we tended to focus early, but have really developed programs across the faculty lifespan. So we started this every other year, but have gone to every year as we've recruited more and more faculty to have a junior faculty retreat every year in September. It's pretty much where the people have started out, if they're going to start in July, August, September. And we go through group mentoring and networking for new folks in different divisions to meet each other, to be comfortable that they're not the only junior person, that they have a peer group. And then that launches into an assigned formal one-on-one mentoring program where folks are assigned a mentor outside of their division. Their division director and senior faculty in the division are natural mentors, But they also, your division director is also your supervisor. So if you need senior advice on how to navigate a conversation such as, I would like more academic time, here's my plan, with a division director, it's nice to have another senior faculty member be able to help guide you in those conversations before having them. And that is a 2-year program, and at the 1-year mark, there's a no blame policy, and you can switch mentors if you want, or stay with them. I think I've just accumulated mentees over the years and kind of forget when the 2 years is up, but that's part of the fun. We also have quarterly faculty development workshops where we'll focus on a specific thing, a CV workshop, how to put your teaching portfolio together, things like that. It's always hard to find a time that works for everybody. And the School of Medicine, over the last couple of years, has really beefed up their professional development workshops and programs, and so we also guide folks in attending those monthly workshops, which are also put on tape. And we often we don't do everything in-house, so as mentioned, AAMC programs for early career faculty or minority faculty for the AAMC are terrific. We always nominate someone for the Rank and Rate, Clinician Educator program, the AUR programs, the management program, et cetera. So taking advantage of external workshops and those kinds of experiences. And we make sure the faculty who we nominate and put forward don't take that time out of their meeting time, and they don't have to pay for that. It's paid for centrally because we're sending them for that, so they don't take it out of their own meeting funds. Mid-career, we have, on a selective basis, helped to support folks to get additional degrees, often executive MBA, other training they want in leadership. Sometimes it's internal and more informal. Sometimes it's some of the external leadership workshops. And across mid-career and senior, we do a lot of focus on leadership training. And that's where our sort of leadership training, succession planning, and for new leaders, division directors, vice chairs, et cetera, I'm increasingly contracted with executive coaches to transition, whether it's from a faculty position or early leadership position to a major leadership role, whether it's in the system or especially coming from another system to a very large, complex, and highly matrixed organization. An executive coach can be exceedingly helpful. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the jewel of our program, which is a leadership academy that is within the department, and it's somewhat based on the Woodruff Leadership Academy, which is a more senior program across our institution, which has been going on for about 15 years. We are going to be graduating our 8th class from the RLA this next month. I think the beginning of June is our graduation. It is a 9-month intensive program, and we, because we have a very strong cultural commitment to a more flattened hierarchy and faculty and staff working together, this is an interprofessional program. So the RLA fellows are faculty and staff in the department and sometimes in affiliated departments. They may be working in Emory Healthcare Informatics, work closely with us, and we want them to be incorporated into our leadership culture. And it is an intensive program. It's one Friday a month where we take them off service, and group projects, reading books, articles, extensive leadership, and there's a pretty substantial graduation and certificate program afterward. And the curriculum focuses on self-development, developing others, and then understanding and developing the organization. We do this through didactic sessions, experiential learning, individual assessment tools. They take conflict assessment tools, DISC, which is a communication tool, have a 360 evaluation done, and that's analyzed with them with a coach, group discussions, panels, and they do a group project. So there's 3 groups. I should have mentioned there are 12 fellows a year, and there are 3 groups within the program that form teams that work on a project that is something to make the department better. And then they usually come up with something with some help and with coaches that they want to implement, at least on a pilot basis. And a number of these have been implemented more long-term in the department, often around quality and workflow. And one thing we have learned over time, and we're actually writing up our 8 years of experience right now, is our selection process. So these are folks who are in early leadership positions, or have tremendous leadership potential, and we are grooming them for leadership positions. They're highly engaged individuals. They really aspire to lead and have very much of a sense of wanting to lead and serve others rather than sort of more self-serving in terms of their development. And we did make some mistakes early on. It is such a strong program that a lot of times we get nominations for folks, and the nominator will say, this person could benefit from the program. Well, what we've started to do is say, if they can benefit, but we're not so sure of their potential for long-term leadership in the department, we'll send them to other courses to get those other skills. But this is about developing leaders in the department. So one of the team projects, there have been obviously many over the years, one that was out of our first class of RLA really had a tremendous impact on the department, and it was a project to develop a training program that fit with our culture, fit with the culture we were aspiring to as well, of service. And it was about how we treat each other as employees and how we treat our patients. So this Service Excellence Institute was based on worker engagement programs in a number of fields, from hospitality to healthcare, and every one of our 1,000 employees have gone through this training. It was initially I think 2 days or a day and a half, and we've gotten it down to a half day for the basic training with other workshops that are optional. And it really stresses an environment of professionalism, respect for one another, regardless of roles in the healthcare team, residents, staff, when I say everybody, I mean everybody. And it reinforces concepts like a fair and just culture, and ways that if we don't feel we're having a professional relationship with someone, or we've had a conflict with them, that there is a cup of coffee conversation, and everybody knows this in the department. If you say, I want to have a cup of coffee conversation with you, that we want to resolve respectfully an interpersonal issue so that we can work better together. Of course, we have opportunities for escalation if somebody doesn't feel comfortable, that doesn't resolve it. But that cultural component has been really helpful. So at 8 years of implementation, the Radiology Leadership Academy and programs that have come out of that have deeply influenced our department in terms of our leadership strength, our growth, and succession planning, building that depth of bench and leadership skills broadly. And so I'm just going to throw up some org charts, faculty and staff at various levels. And what I've done, this was after 7 years, I haven't put this year's class till they graduate. Stars are where folks have gone through the program. So the most senior people tend not to, but these are folks who've either were newly appointed to this position as they came on, or went on to have promotions afterwards. So you can see it's sort of a Christmas tree of folks in the department's leadership that have gone through this training program, which is a significant commitment. The metrics of success in faculty development programs and staff development programs are always hard, and we're struggling with this as we write this paper. and we've written some interim reports previously. Clearly, the cultural impact is palpable, but how to quantify that can be difficult. And there's also other variables that affect how we nurture our culture. But they're all complementary to these programs and to our philosophy overall, helping with engagement, resilience issues, retention. Our faculty retention rate over the last decade has averaged 95%. And for staff, in the low 90s. So that's pretty high to maintain at a time of great change. It's not that we don't want people ever to leave, but certainly it is one reflection of engagement. We have much more diversity among our leadership than ever before. This is something we've worked on quite a bit, and we pay a lot of attention to diversity among the RLA classes. We want diversity of site within our system, diversity of perspective, ethnic and gender diversity. The gains in skills, we've had a number of surveys, and people definitely report subjective gains, and there are some evidence for objective significant gains. And we have done a lot of focus on succession planning and grooming people and appointing folks who are graduates in other informal leadership roles or assistant director type roles so they can grow into that next position. So I think I've gone over my time just a little bit, and I don't know if we're doing questions now or later.
If you can stay with us for until Dr. Wiggins is done, then we can do combined.
Yes, perfect, perfect. Excellent, thank you.
So let's just do a quick intro here. Here we are. Dr. Ernest Wiggins, Director of the Division of Vascular Interventional Radiology at Monmouth Medical Center, Assistant Program Director for the Radiology Residency, Assistant Professor in Radiology at Drexel University. He did bowl a perfect game and has had a hole-in-one.
At the same time.
That is difficult to do. That's quite an athletic accomplishment. And first Esquire Man of the Week for their 80th anniversary of Life of Man Special Edition, and plays the keyboards in a Jersey Shore cover band called Guilty Pleasure. So he's going to be talking about implementing faculty development in a small program. All right. Ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Harp, for that introduction. As you already know, I'm Ernest Wiggins. I'm from Monmouth Medical Center. I've met a couple of very kind people this week who thought I was one of the residents. I appreciate that, so thank you. But I am the Assistant Program Director for the residency. We will be going over strategies for implementation of a faculty development program in a small program. Here are our goals. A number of studies have been performed that really highlight areas that you need to address to have a successful faculty development program. And you see them listed here on this slide. When you first start, you have to have goals and expectations of your faculty that are clearly delineated, people that know what is expected of them throughout the process. You have to focus on a culture of respect where faculty have input into the program so that they feel as if they are part of not only going through the process, but also the structure of your development program that you have at your institution. Institutional culture aligned with faculty development culture, I know that was already addressed, and it's a very, very important thing, even for a small program. And in some ways, it may even be a little bit even more important in a smaller program, and we'll talk about that. You have to design a program to meet the diverse needs of your faculty with a range of opportunities, have timely constructive feedback, and measures for rewards for successful completion of the program. So what are some challenges that we think about for small programs that may not be as much of as an issue at other places? For a small program, there's very limited, if any, educational time. Departmental and institutional resources may not be as robust, whether that be not only in the Department of Radiology, but also throughout the institution. There are increasing productivity demands on all of us, and in particular for smaller private practice groups, as you're trying to read more studies, but with fewer and fewer members of your department, because as a private practice, you are funding the cost of your radiologist. There are also lack of incentives for educational activities, which we're going to talk about areas where we can kind of make a change for that. So where do we have an advantage? We have the advantage of the fact that being a smaller program, our leadership works very closely with all the faculty, so no one really gets lost. There are more opportunities for one-on-one connection and mentoring, increased availability for informal educational opportunities, which are very, very important for smaller programs, personalized feedback, and given the fact that the department is smaller, there are more opportunities for leadership, particularly for our younger faculty who do want to get involved. So early on in the process, you need to have an individual and group needs assessment to look at who do you have in your department and what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are they interested in. Set benchmarks with timeline for implementation, and focus on your individual unique practice environment and needs. If you're working in a smaller program that does not have a lab for bench research, then your practice may be tailored more towards clinical research, and you want to encourage your faculty to go in that direction and provide them with the tools that they may need for that. Being in a smaller program, a lot of times it's a little bit easier to have a cultural development that is much aligned amongst the individuals, and so you can have a development of team initiatives that everybody buys into. Again, the individual aspirations must be closely aligned with the group initiatives. The faculty have to buy into your faculty development program. You have to cultivate a collaborative environment where the faculty feel comfortable expressing thoughts, developing their skills, giving you feedback as to what's working, what's not working for them. And sometimes their goals may change throughout the process as they get further and further involved in their career. There must be realistic expectations on time and also on people's ability, their capacity, where their strengths and weaknesses lie. The advantage of the smaller program is that we can tailor each individual faculty development with the job requirements, but also with the individual and their interests. And we provide opportunities where the faculty can make the mistakes, have a revision to their overall goals and plans, and really want to foster a community where they feel comfortable doing that. Again, faculty ownership of the program is key to active participation. Aligning the institutional culture with the faculty developmental culture. Obviously, there can be competing interests. For the institution, there are productivity demands with less and less support, increasing non-clinical, non-reimbursable requirements, serving on hospital committees, non-educational meetings, all the things that we're told to do to have a successful practice, private practice, a lot of times compete with our ability to have time for faculty development and even resident teaching. For the individual, the lack of non-clinical academic time, clinical needs supersede academic reports to private practice demands on productivity and turnaround time, and patient care must continue throughout the day. And there must be a reciprocal relationship. Your institution must embrace your faculty development. Training efforts can sometimes be hindered by a lack of a buy-in from your institution. But the degree of faculty participation is also directly linked to the degree that the faculty has a commitment to the institutional values and goals. So there are strategies for formal educational activities for small programs, utilization of the resources that you have. You can utilize CME to provide faculty development for your private practice physicians. Your graduate medical education committee and other institutional resources are valuable in setting up ground rounds, inviting speakers from medical school affiliates if you have them, and also having speakers from other disciplines within your institution. However, and probably the most important take-home of my few time with you is that faculty development in a small program is not limited to lectures and other formal educational activities. You have to have comprehensive training in a smaller program. Short-term methods where you have a workshop every now and then, occasional lectures every now and then, without a well-designed program with a curriculum have been shown to be ineffective. So instructional mentoring from the entire career of your faculty has been shown to be the most beneficial. Mentoring and role modeling are probably the best area for a small program to develop the junior faculty and even faculty as they go on throughout their career. Everyone has different teaching styles, and in a smaller program where you're able to interact on a more personal one-on-one level, it's a lot easier for you to evaluate lectures. We go to each other's lectures, we give each other feedback on their lectures. Our program director on his academic days comes through the reading room and observes VBOX teaching and can mentor in that regard as well, really developing the faculty as educators outside of just a traditional lecture format. Any academic pursuits, obviously every program has requirements for academic pursuits, but not everybody in a private practice, a smaller environment, may be interested in academic pursuits. And really this is where our faculty leadership has to work one-on-one with our junior faculty members in showing them research design, implementation, and completion. Serving as journal reviewers or areas where our faculty can learn a lot about the academic process and also satisfy some of those needs in a smaller community-based hospital that may not have the same research opportunities available. And again, as was touched on earlier today, having a mentorship program in a smaller community hospital where you know each other, you know each other's families, you know each other's situations and their interests can really help with managing that work-life balance, which we know is so important. Every successful development program should have timely and constructive feedback. And the key components, again, are faculty buy-in. That's with everything that we do. Transparency in the evaluation process. It should be a timely evaluation and opportunity for self-assessment. I found this in the literature and I thought was very interesting. When you look at evaluation of the faculty, there was a study that showed that developing of program-specific milestones were much better than a traditional Likert evaluation form for faculty development. There was more participation, more objectivity, and people actually were able to look at areas where they could improve and where their strengths were. Here's an example of this, which I thought was quite interesting. If you look under the professionalism competency, these guys actually give each other a level 1 if you grumble or belittle a resident attempting to maintain the work hour rules. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. You actually go up to level 2 if you're quiet, but you don't respect the work hour rules. So again, that's for your residents who worry about work hour rules, you show them what's going on in general surgery. Feel free to share that with them. Again, and there must be measures for participation and reward structures. For us, peer recognition is very important. We do have monthly faculty meetings where our individual recognitions are highlighted by our program director. Also recognition from the residents, whether it be the resident survey, but also at graduation, the residents a lot of times will recognize the individual faculty that were important in their education, and that's also very good. And the last thing is to really take advantage, if you do have a medical school affiliate, take advantage of the academic appointments and reward your faculty who have successfully completed any of the goals that you have set for them with academic appointments at your adjoining medical school institution. So in summary, successful key points: personalized approach with realistic expectations, aligning the interdepartmental and institutional goals, mentoring over an entire career, not only at the ViewBox and in the lecturing, following each other's lectures, but also with a work-life balance, constructive feedback, and recognition of achievements. So I thank you for your time.
One of the challenges that we have, and I think why we need to be focused on, obviously the increasing demands on productivity, increasing reimbursements. It seems like we're constantly trying to improve the value of having residents beyond the esoteric that we like to teach, we like to add value. Those are all noble causes, but of course when it comes down to being practices with a certain bottom line. What have you done in the past, or what do you know of, and approaches will you take to that to convince practices of the value of residents?
Right, that's a great question. And there's really two levels of that. I mean, the first is your individual department and also the institution. We're very fortunate because our institution really values medical education across the board. We've have such a great working relationship not only with our DIO and the medical education office, but also with all of the other clinical departments. And so one of the ways we've been able to show value is that we have our residents really involved in the education and interaction of the residents in the other departments. And so we still have, despite the fact that we have PACs like everyone else, we still have a reading room which is always full and people are always coming down from other sections. And I think when they speak to their attendings and their mentors and they realize the value that our residents play, that really goes a long way in helping us there. In terms of the individual practice demands, that really comes from our chairman. We're fortunate that our chairman is also our program director, and I know that's not always the case. And so in that scenario, it is very difficult, and you really kind of have to look at your own individual institution. And sometimes, you know, if you have the chairman and the program director are two different people, so you just, although it may be difficult, you may really kind of need to let them see the value of the resident education, interacting with the residents maybe on a little bit more of a consistent basis, so they can show that they are also helping you get through some of your work.
Yeah, I think the residents have a significant impact on the culture. We do, I didn't spend time on it, but we do a lot of development that's focused on that leadership as well. That mirrors what we do at that.
Good questions.
Do you have any advice about how to get your faculty, you talked about buy-in, getting your faculty buy-in for the development program? Any more input? I have to struggle with that.
Sure. Again, that becomes more on an individual basis. And so the best thing to do from the start is to meet with each individual faculty member and find out what their interests are, but also the things that maybe they're not as strong in or they're more afraid of getting involved in, and find out if you were able to give them some guidance, would they then be interested in doing that? You know, I'll give you a great example. Even for me, I really was not that interested in research and manuscript writing, but our program director has really kind of coached me from day one to get me more interested in that. So really that initial needs assessment, I think, is the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, I really like your comments about the alignment with institutional goals as well as individual goals, and I agree. You want to have things fair, but that doesn't mean that everybody's career development plan is going to be the same. So I think everybody's interested in their own career development, so that's how you engage them, meet with people, ask them what they're interested in and align the institutional goals. And it has to be individually crafted to some of them.
I have a question. You know, there's always a
For us, we just give them more call. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I will say though, in a smaller program, I think people who are not interested realize that they're not interested, and they will move on to a private practice group that does not have residents. And I think because maybe it's a little bit easier of a transition, because we are working in a private practice environment. And so for the few people who start and say, this is really not what I want, they do move on.
What are the average retention rates nowadays in small and large practices in general? You mentioned a retention rate of upwards of 95%, and you're...
Yeah, the average around 95%. We have flows of 92, high as 96. But over the last 8 years or so, we've been tracking it.
How about so how does that compare to other major academic
I
foundations?
don't know the answer to that. I know that it is, above 90% is good. I don't know, I've seen any national statistics about our field and where it is now. If anybody else has.
Yeah,
But we strive for above 90.
And I'm sure the job market has a lot to do with that.
It does, it does.
The more options people have. Any other questions?
Just a comment again on a small program. The hardest thing I think is faculty development, scholarly activity in a small program, because when you go to Emory University, you go with the idea in mind that you're going to have an academic career. But a lot of small programs are composed of people in a private practice, and so you have a dual role. And what Dr. Wiggins described, the benefit is building a program that combines both, but it's much more a challenge that I don't think is often recognized.
I have to say, Richard, I've just made the transition from academic to a community hospital environment. And I'm going through this exercise myself, and along the same lines, because I'm coming in thinking I'm going to grow this small community practice, and maybe it's give a little academic flair to this. What I'm realizing now is faculty development doesn't necessarily have to be along the academic route. It can be making a significant difference in patient care. You can develop them as leaders in their areas to make an impact on the hospital committees, or the patient care space, rather than, I don't want to force, I want you guys to start publishing. That's not how they took that job in the first place. They did take it to be the best clinicians they can be, certainly. So leveraging that interest that they have in smaller programs to say, how can we make you a leader in your clinical service? What new technologies or practices can we introduce in those clinical services that we can develop and make you a leader in that way?
And I actually, just if I could add to that, I think it's much easier now to have that full spectrum of development. So when I talk about scholarship, I mean, you may be interested in writing grants, but I mean also to innovating in the practice, innovating in quality, taking part in health policy discussion, being involved in advocacy. So it can involve all those areas. So that's why people need to focus on what they're interested in, but there's many more possibilities now to embrace the question.
But that also means, though, from an ACGME standpoint, that also needs to be recognized, not just publications. Like we're saying,
Yeah.
contributions to the clinical services that are also part of faculty development should also be recognized.
Some innovative aspects.
Right.
Either quality projects.
And to speak to that point, to give you kind of a concrete example, in our institution, several of our radiologists have worked with local neurologists and neuropsychiatrists, and they have an annual dementia conference in which they participate as guest speakers, talk about imaging modalities that are currently used, what options are available for individuals struggling with cognitive illnesses. And it acts as a way to
So, Dr. Spicer's a good friend of mine from Lexington. Let me get going here. A medical degree from Meharry Medical College, Nashville, Tennessee. Fellowship in MSK and breast at Henry Ford. Assistant professor, and he is the program director at UK. Paul's going to be speaking on how to engage junior and senior faculty to engage the new generation of learners. So thanks, Paul, for... Thanks. And,
Thanks, Harp, for the introduction. I have no relevant disclosures for this talk. So as I was thinking about how I would answer this particular question for this talk, I thought back to what I actually did before I went to medical school. So I actually taught high school for several years before I went to medical school. And being a teacher that came straight out of college, I had unique experiences with the students that most of the other teachers didn't have, because I really wasn't that much older than they were. You know, from things like having similar interest in music to also being single to maybe having similar interest in movies or sports or whatever at the time, one of the main advantages I had was if they ever wanted to talk about experiences that were relevant to them, like career counseling or where should I go to college or those kind of things, or what should I look for in a college, they'd always come to talk to me about it because I was the one who had most recently gone through that same experience. And so my experiences at that point in my life were the ones that were the most relevant to them. So then fast forward a number of years, and when I became a faculty member at UK, I came straight out of fellowship, and so I interacted very well with the residents. And for instance, like when I would do board reviews, you know, I was only a year or two removed from the boards myself. And so they would always come and be excited to come to my oral board reviews because they knew I was the one who had most recently taken the test. What I was showing them was relevant, and probably what I was showing them were the exact cases I saw on the test. And so my experience was very relevant to them because it was the same experience they were going through at the time. Now, as I fast forwarded a couple of years and the board exam changed, my experience was no longer the exact same experience they had. And so when I would do board reviews, maybe they wouldn't all show up anymore because I did not take the test that they're taking. And so my point is how do you define who is a senior faculty member and who is a junior faculty member? Well, we as faculty may define it as, well, who's the full professor versus the associate professor versus the assistant professor? Or who's involved in these particular activities within the hospital or the department, or who's involved in national societies and who isn't, and so forth. But if you actually ask your residents, do they know which faculty members are which? They may not know that. They may actually not know who are the full professors and the associate professors and the assistant professors in your department. They may not actually know who is heavily involved in certain national societies and who is not. And so if you back up and look at this from a resident perspective, how would a resident define who is a junior faculty and who is a senior faculty? Well, one way you might look at it from a resident perspective is a resident might say that a junior faculty is someone who went through similar experiences in their training compared to what they're going through currently, whereas a senior faculty member might be someone who had dissimilar experiences in their training compared to today's learners. So what kind of experiences are we talking about here? And so I just listed a few experiences. There are many others that you could mention, but one might be those faculty members that took the core exam and the certifying exam versus the rest of us who took the physics and the writtens and the orals. We don't know what's on the core exam. We don't know what's on the certifying exam. So if they want to go to a faculty member and say, hey, how do you study for this test? What resources were useful? Are they going to go to somebody who prepared for the oral exam or somebody that took the core exam a year or two ago? Same with call coverages. You know, when I was a first-year resident, I started taking call in February, and our weekend call shifts were from 7 a.m. Saturday morning to 5 p.m. Sunday evening, 34 straight hours. But there isn't a single resident in my program that does more than 13 straight hours. So my experience is very, very different than their experience. What about their procedures? Supervised procedures versus independent procedures. When I was a first-year resident, I think I had one LP that was ever supervised, and I did the rest of them by myself. I did, double contrast barium enemas, they showed me how to do one and said, good luck, you can do the rest of them yourself. And so it's a very, very different experience. What about duty hours? As I mentioned a minute ago, I did 34-hour call shifts as a first-year resident, and now they can't do more than 13. And as we've heard a lot about at this meeting, now today's learners like various styles of lectures and so forth, as opposed to our old hot seats or didactic conferences. And so these are just some of the experiences, and we could think of many others that are different now than what the learners today may encounter. So what's the result of all this? Well, junior faculty usually tend to relate well to today's learners because their experiences they went through are similar or the same compared to today's learners. But senior faculty, on the other hand, they may need to work a little bit at relating to today's current learners. So what about for the junior faculty? Well, as I already mentioned, the junior faculty, they're pretty much fresh out of fellowship. Their experiences were very similar. And so what do we need to do to help encourage them to interact with today's learners? Well, basically, we just need to encourage them to build on these experiences. And they will establish, for the most part, excellent relationship with the learners based on having a similar experience and training. So now we're going to spend the rest of the time talking more about the senior faculty group and what should we do for them. Now, senior faculty, obviously, we're going to have all the differences in training and board exams and so forth compared to today's learners. But there are also some things that sometimes, in some situations, some senior faculty member may do that will widen the gap between the learner and the faculty member. And what are some of those things? We can name lots of things, but sometimes senior faculty will express that they somehow feel that their training was better than the current learner, and that will widen that chasm between the learner and the resident. Some will express a frustration about having to teach for an exam that they didn't take, and frankly, they don't know what's on it. And for instance, one of our former colleagues at UK, he was a fluoroscopist, and he said he looked at the ABR study guide, and what was on it for fluoroscopy? Everything from the mouth to the anus. But when he asked a resident how many questions on fluoro were actually on the core exam, he said 1. So why should he waste hours and hours teaching them all this fluoro for such a low yield topic? And that then leads to an unwillingness to help them prepare for the test. If you don't know what's on it, you may not feel like, why should I help? I may not be doing any good for them. And then what are some other things that senior faculty may do that may widen this chasm between them and the learner? Well, one thing to ask yourself is, do we expect more of the residents than we actually expect of ourselves? And so some of our faculty will occasionally complain to me, well, so-and-so used their smartphone during lecture. How many of us have used our smartphone during lectures here at the AUR? I can confess that in the first 5 minutes Monday morning, I had my smartphone out checking baseball scores. And where I was ranked in my fantasy baseball league, I'm number 1 currently, by the way. So the point is that you can't expect them to do things that we don't expect ourselves to do. And another, do we think in retrospect that we were a better resident than we really were? A lot of us sometimes, as time goes on, we kind of forget what we were like as a resident, and we only think about what a resident should look like, not what we may have looked like back at that time. Do we remember our own struggles as residents? We each had our own struggles. We heard the speaker earlier talk about depression in some residents. Others struggle with personal issues. Others struggle with actually work-related issues. Do we forget that maybe we went through some of the similar things during residency? Do we forget at what point in our training we learned certain things? And I find this to be a problem for myself as I get further and further from training. I kind of forget, when did I learn this as opposed to another thing? And for instance, if someone's on their first day of MSK radiographs, why would I think that they should know what AVN looks like on an MRI? And if I expect them to know that and then I criticize them for not knowing that, is that really fair if they've never had MRI before? And then finally, do we hold each resident up against the model of a perfect resident? And this is sort of sometimes a syndrome I've seen. A few years ago, we had a really excellent resident. He was good at research, he was good academically, he was chief resident, he went on to be a fellow at our place. He just was really excellent across the board, did it well in all of his rotations, handled work-life balance really, really well. But it's not really fair to compare all the residents to him. He was the single star of probably the last 5 years. You can't expect all the residents to be like that individual, so you can't really hold them up to the model of a perfect resident, just are they at the level that they should be. So these are some things that senior faculty may do that widens this chasm between them and the learner. So how does that fit in with the perception, or how does that senior faculty perception of the learners match with what the learners actually want out of their training? So Sam Alert, so millennials, what do they value the most compared to prior generations? Well, they want mentoring, okay? Residents today or learners today want to be mentored by the faculty. They want a relationship with us. They don't want a chasm between us and them. They want a relationship with us. And then secondly, according to this article, which of the following is the most important factor for resident satisfaction and the quality of the daily workstation experience? It's that they want teaching. They want to interact with us. They want a relationship. They want to learn from us. They don't want distance between them and us. And so how can we bridge this gap between the senior faculty and the learners? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do it. And so since this program has been a lot about mentoring, you can have a mentor program. Now, we've heard a lot about mentor programs throughout the week, but I want to kind of spin it slightly different. So most of the mentor programs that we've heard about is what can the faculty member do for the learner or the mentee. But I want to flip it around and ask, well, what can the faculty member or mentor learn from the mentee? What can they get out of the relationship? So a mentor program should be beneficial to both parties. So the mentor should also be able to get something out of this relationship. So what can a faculty member gain from a mentor program? Well, first, it helps build a relationship between the learner and the faculty member. And this is what the learners today want. They want a relationship with us. They want to engage with us. It helps provide an opportunity for the faculty member to connect with the learner, which provides an opportunity to learn their current needs and struggles. You're not going to know what the residents want or need or what they're struggling with unless you have a relationship with them, unless you spend time with them and talk to them. It's going to help improve morale and trust between the faculty and the learners, and it's going to improve faculty teaching. And how do I mean that? You know, with my learners that are my mentees, I ask them, you know, how's my teaching? What do I need to improve? If I don't spend time with them, they're not going to give me an honest answer to that question. They're not going to tell the program director that their lectures are terrible unless I spend time with them and develop a relationship with them. And then they may well, maybe you should change this or that. That might be better. So once you actually develop a relationship with them, then things will open up and they'll be more honest. And that will help you to improve as well. So how have I used this at our program? So for me personally, I've assigned 3 learners to me to be my mentees. I take them to dinner away from work. So I try to get them out away from work in a more pleasant environment where they can be a little more open and honest and have more honest discussion about things at work or things personally, things that will help me, things that will help them, and so forth. And I've worked on some various academic projects with them over time. So what have I changed as a faculty member based on my interaction with my mentees? I've changed my lectures from the traditional lecture, which most of them don't like anymore, to more interactive conferences like journal clubs or multiple choice questions or so forth. I've shortened the length of my lectures to a more appealing time frame. And I've changed my board reviews from the old oral style to more of a multiple choice style or something like that that they feel like they get more out of. What have I changed as a program director based on my interaction with the learners? I've actually changed some of the rotation schedules based on what they need, particularly in preparation for the core exam, what rotations that they need to get in before that test, when they need to get them in the year, and so forth. I've actually changed call schedules based on this too. For instance, some of our call schedules at our institution, since the faculty parks in a different location than the lowly learners, I didn't realize that some of our call schedules required them to come in at a time that they had to park like a mile away from the hospital and walk in. And so if they then got off late at night, they had to walk that full mile back to not a very desirable part of the city, which was not very good particularly for the female residents. And so we've changed some of the call schedules to help mitigate that problem, but I would never have known that had I not, spent more time with them and talked to them about that. So what are the desired results of a mentor program? It'll help improve communication and relationship between the faculty and the learners. It's going to help improve morale and trust between the faculty and the learners. It'll lead to professional growth for both the faculty and the learners. And I would just encourage you, if you're not currently involved in a mentor program, I think if you get involved, you'll be like me and you'll find that you actually get more out of the program than you give. Thank you very much.
So our next speaker, Dr. Spalluto, is an assistant professor of radiology and radiologic science at Vanderbilt, a clinical radiologist. Her work focuses on breast imaging and pelvic and obstetric ultrasound, actively involved in patient-centered research, women faculty development, and teaching residents and medical students. Serves on the ACR Commission for Patient and Family-Centered Care, a Commission for Women and Diversity. And she'll be speaking today on mentoring women faculty.
Thank you, Harpit. So as Harp said, I'll be speaking on mentoring women faculty. I have no disclosures. Our faculty development program is supported by a grant through the American Medical Association and also by a grant through Vanderbilt University's Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about an overall review of the status of women in radiology, about the importance of gender diversity in radiology, why we're so concerned about it, why it's such a prominent issue here at AUR 2017. And I'll also talk about faculty development and mentoring for women in radiology, things we've done at our department and things we've had some success with in our department. My SAM alert is that my SAM questions are in the first couple slides here. We'll get them over with. So it's no secret that the percentage of women in radiology is lower than the percentage of men in radiology. This slide shows the age of women in radiology. So women radiologists who are over 65, they're about 11%. Women to men ratio there. And slowly over time, the percentage of women by age in radiology has increased. So we've gone from about 11% in people who finished residency, 30 years ago, to 26% now. But you can see it's remained stagnant at that 26% level over the past 10 to 15 years. So it's a big question. Why are women not going into radiology? It's a desirable field. Most of the women I know who are in radiology really like it, so why is it that women are not going into radiology? So if you average all of these numbers out, currently about 22% of all practicing radiologists are women. So less than 1/4 of all practicing radiologists are women. This is in stark contrast to the number of women and men entering and finishing medical school. So on this graph, the green bar is women, and the blue bars are men. So you can see there's almost near parity in the number of women applying to, entering, and finishing medical school. It's actually interesting that more men apply, slightly more women get in, and even more women finish, so maybe the women are doing a little bit better than the men there in medical school. And then the number of residents, about equal again. So almost 50-50 for the number of overall residents, but only 25% of the women are going into radiology. So concerning. Why are women not going into radiology? I think one of the big reasons is role models and the visibility of women in radiology. So if we can get more women into leadership positions in radiology and more women going into radiology and more medical students see them, then we may get more women into radiology in general. This low percentage of women entering radiology leads to a low proportion of full-time women faculty in radiology. So more data from the AAMC showing that of all clinical departments, radiology has the 3rd lowest percentage of women faculty. Pretty sad. You never want to be on the list that's the lowest 3. So outside of orthopedic surgery and surgery, radiology has the lowest percentage of women faculty. How are women doing in leadership positions? Not great here either. Of all chairs, approximately 16% of radiology chairs are women. Not the lowest, but room for improvement. In all leadership roles, 15% of women hold all leadership roles. That's across the board for private practice and academic, so including chairs, vice chairs, presidents, board members. 15% of all leadership roles are held by women. If you compare men and women going into leadership, about 17% of men pursue leadership roles and only 10% of women pursue leadership roles. So women are less likely to pursue leadership roles than men. And why is it important? Why all the buzz? Why do we want to have equal numbers of women to men in radiology? It's important at multiple levels. At an institutional level, diversity can give us a better perspective on talent. It can give us different ideas on problem-solving techniques, increased effectiveness in educational methods, and overall organizational success can be improved with gender diversity. It can help in recruitment. This is a photo from an AAWR reception at the RSNA showing some of our strong women leaders in the field. When women medical students and residents see other women in leadership positions, it gives them an idea of the success they can have. It gives them role models, it gives them mentors, it gives them people they have access to. So this is a way of increasing the visibility of women in radiology to help with recruitment. Even more important, gender diversity can improve patient care. It's been proven to have a higher quality of care and better health outcomes when we have a gender diverse population of physicians. And some people just look at the bottom line, so it actually improves the business of radiology. It improves the revenue. Women healthcare consumers now make the most healthcare decisions in this country, and they want other women behind the lines helping them to make these decisions. It can increase employee satisfaction and customer relations. So barriers that women face to success in the workplace, this is the overall workplace, not just in medicine. But they have less access to opportunities for career development, less access to senior leaders and mentors, and fewer networking opportunities. So you can see how the pipeline gets squeezed as you go from entry level down to the C-suite, men and women starting equal, and then by the time you're in the C-suite, only 20% of women are in the C-suite. So in radiology, it's even worse. Here they're starting 50-50. In radiology, we're starting 25-75. So you can see how by the time we get to leadership, we have even less. This paper came out recently, Dr. Kapoor's paper in radiology, which I thought was great, talking about gender differences in academic rank of radiologists. And what she found was that radiology is the only specialty where a man and a woman are equally likely to get promoted to the rank of full professor. But what she's done is she has taken an exactly equal man and woman. So if you took a man and woman radiologist who had the exact same set of credentials, same number of NIH grants, same number of papers published, we're creating the same number of RVUs. If you took that exact same person, only difference, man and woman, they were both equally likely to get promoted. The problem is, they aren't equal when they go up for promotion. And so the bottom line is that in reality, 26% of men are full professors, and only 16% of women are full professors. So it's not equal. And that's because, as I said, they aren't equal. Men and women are not obtaining the same number of NIH grants. They aren't authoring the same number of papers. They aren't becoming senior author, or last author, or first author on papers. So what we need to do is give women equal opportunity to these stepping stones that will allow them to advance their career, and then when they can be equal to the men and women, when they go up for promotion, they'll have the same chance for promotion. So how can we improve faculty development and mentoring for women radiologists? The AAMC has done extensive research on this. Their faculty forward engagement survey suggests that there are three main things that women faculty may benefit from. 1, clear expectations about the role and path of advancement. 2, an equitable and diverse workplace. And 3, access to opportunities for development and advancement. So the way I looked at this was, are men and women really that different? I don't know. These are my kids. I was teaching them how to swim this week, which is a little bit like mentoring. It takes a long time. It's very frustrating. And in the end, you hope that it will have been worthwhile. So my son, you say something like, we're going to go swimming, and he jumps in before he's even looked to see if there's water in the pool. My daughter's a little more hesitant on the steps, saying, you know, how cold is the water going to be? How many steps are there? How long are we going to be in there for? Are you going to hold my hand the whole time? When are you going to let go of my hand? And I think that's what the AAMC survey is saying. And not to say that all men or women fall into either of these buckets, but women tend to want more information. They want to know what the road's going to look like. They want to know what the commitment's going to look like. One of the best examples I can think of is when you go on a job interview, and I know every woman who's here has thought about this. They're like, should I ask about maternity leave? Should I ask them? Are they going to tell me? And the bottom line is women waste all this time thinking about how they're going to phrase that question the right way. It should just be in the job interview. The onus should not be on the woman. It should be, you know, the third thing that the job says, either yes or no, we have maternity leave. There it is. It's out in the open. Transparency. So how can we improve faculty development and mentoring at the individual level? We need to understand the needs of women faculty, create transparent promotional guidelines, provide equal opportunity, and increase access to networking opportunities for women. How can institutions at the bigger level, at the institutional level, address gender diversity? Make a compelling case for diversity. Let people know why it's important. Ensure that hiring, promotions, and reviews are fair. Invest in more employee training, and focus on accountability and results. So at our institution, and this sounds similar to what a lot of people have recommended for mentoring programs, we developed a women's faculty program, and I'll tell you a few things about it, where we've had success. First, we performed a needs assessment. We asked questions like, is professional advancement important to you? And do you believe fewer women than men pursue academic promotions? So it's exciting that 89% of the women in our department find professional development or professional advancement important, but kind of scary that 80% believe that fewer women than men pursue academic promotions. So a problem that needs to be addressed. We asked them about barriers to advancing their career, and we focused our program on the two largest barriers identified that did not require departmental protocol changes. We focused on lack of mentorship and limited understanding of promotional guidelines. We based our modules on the needs of the female faculty. So this is an example of a few of the modules. We started with understanding of promotional guidelines and moved along from there. Our modules were designed to not feel too much like work. They were held in the evening in an off-campus location, 30 minutes for social networking and 90 minutes for a speaker and questions. And I, to be honest, think that 30 minutes of social networking was just as important as the speaker and the question session. That 30 minutes gave the women a time to identify with other women in the department, a time to hear that other people had the same concerns they did, to talk about ways that they've addressed different concerns that they've had in the department, and we did provide food and beverage. We post our materials to a departmental website, so even if you cannot attend the modules, you still have access to the information. At year one, we have found that we send another survey out after year one. 86% of our women agree that this liftoff program provided a better understanding of promotional guidelines. 75% indicate improved access to faculty development opportunities. 62% indicate improved access to career advancement opportunities, and 69% believe liftoff offered more opportunities for mentorship. So at 1 year, we feel like we've had pretty good success. We're going to continue the program and continue to monitor individual outcomes for longer. At 1 year, we also asked same questions that were asked at the time of the needs assessment. Is professional advancement important to you? And are you satisfied with the pace of your advancement? The graph that is circled on the far right, that's a comparison of, are you satisfied with your pace of advancement? And this is excluding full professors. So looking at our more junior faculty, the assistant and associate professors. Prior to our program, 25% of these women were satisfied with their pace of advancement, and 1 year into the program, 46 were satisfied with their pace of advancement, and that does have statistical significance. Several early career successes, including promotions from assistant to associate professor to full professor, nurse practitioners becoming faculty members. Several have assumed leadership roles, and there have been several individual academic successes, including first grants awarded, first scientific abstracts accepted, and awards received. So a few pearls for mentoring women faculty. Transparency. I think this is overall the most important thing. Be honest, find out what the women want, and let them know what's expected of them to get there. Clear expectations, well-defined promotional criteria, and a consideration for promotional criteria that recognize excellence in multiple areas, including scholarly activity, clinical activity, teaching, and service activities. Promoting an equal and diverse workplace. And most importantly, equal access to opportunity and an early exposure to research and research mentors. Thank you.
So I'll invite our last speaker up, and then we'll take questions at the last segment of the program. Just a quick intro, if you don't mind. So I'd like to invite Lourenco up. And went to Harvard undergrad, UMass Medical School, and residency at Brown. Did her Women's Imaging Fellowship at Beth Israel Deaconess in Boston. She's the Associate Program Director. She's been for 3 years. She obviously enjoys the teaching and mentorship role. She considers herself a foodie, both cooking and consuming, I guess.
Exactly.
And also my Disney cruise advisor.
That's right.
Really.
And
I was going on my first Disney cruise, and she was like, let me tell you all about it. So.
I think in my next life I'll be a travel planner. But anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Harp, for the opportunity. It's tough to be the closer on like the last session of the last day, but I will try to move it along and keep everybody hopefully engaged and awake. So we're going to talk about mentoring millennials and new staff and what is so different. I have no financial disclosures. So my goals for this afternoon are to give you some basics about who are the millennials, what are some of the things that are different, why mentoring matters particularly to this generation, although all of us have been beneficiaries of excellent mentors. And then finally, some tips for how to mentor younger staff and trainees. So who are the millennials? So they are the largest generation since the boomers. There are over 80 million millennials. They were born from the 1980s to the late 90s. They are a very smart bunch. So they are the most highly educated generation ever. They also are super tech savvy, so they're what we refer to as digital natives, right? I look at my kids with my iPhone and they figure out how to do more things with it than I can. And they are ambitious individuals, and they're not just ambitious to advance their own careers, they're actually very socially responsible and really concerned with leaving the world a better place. And I think that's a very noble goal and one that we should share. They communicate very differently, though. They text a lot. We have found that we have had to have more formal communication teaching sessions, if you will, what I sort of considered normal everyday stuff that I still try to teach my sons, shake somebody's hand and look in them in the eye when you introduce yourself. We've had, to review that you can't just text your patients during the consent process. You actually need to make them feel, comfortable with you and welcome. There are definitely work differences in what folks expect. So first of all, they are very interested in doing work that matters. And we in our field are very fortunate that what we do actually matters a great deal. I think some of the struggle with radiology is that if you do only diagnostic radiology in a field where you don't see patients, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to remember the person behind the image that you're looking at. And so I think it's worth taking a moment just to sort of remind our trainees and young staff about how many lives you can really touch, right? If you look at our patient panels, if you will, they're huge compared to an internist or other primary care provider. I feel fortunate that in breast imaging, I see patients every day, so I'm not, falling down on the part of forgetting that there are people behind the images. They really are big fans of open communication, and they're much less in tune with the sort of hierarchical nature of medicine and our profession in general, right? I'm fine with my residents call me by my first name. I encourage that. It's about a 50-50 split whether they actually do it or not. But I think this generation's grown up with calling their, friends' parents, Sally as opposed to Mrs. Jones. So very different styles there. They really want frequent feedback, like more frequent than one could ever imagine. Like we walk out of the procedure room and they want feedback on that procedure. So we struggle sometimes with, we have an electronic evaluation system, and there are faculty that do the evaluations, 6 months down the road. Now, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. There's no way you can give appropriate, accurate feedback 6 months down the road. So really try to give the feedback in the moment. If you're correcting a report, do it then. If you're walking out of a procedure room, try to, do it then. And they really want to be heard, and they want to join organizations that will hear people at all levels, right? Like when I started in my group, it was like you're the new kid on the block, you sit down and you read the cases and don't make waves for the first year or two. They really want to be in an organization where input from all levels is heard and recognized. And it's easy to say, yes, yes, tell me what you think, but there has to be a mechanism where you sort of close the loop and somebody's acknowledging what they're hearing coming from them, otherwise they'll feel ignored. They really like to work in teams. So again, reading rooms that have more than one person in it at a time are really great, involving them on hospital tumor boards, again, very beneficial to the field and to everybody's professional satisfaction. And they want to be acknowledged. So I try really hard. I definitely send the emails of, oh, you missed this on night float. But I also try really hard to send the email, hey, great call. You did the right thing. That was a subtle finding. Good job. Probably more than any other generation, they really want mentoring. And so the traditional mentoring setup is sort of what's delineated here. It's the more senior faculty, as Paul discussed, sort of helping the junior faculty come up the ladder. There are a lot of different ways to mentor. This is kind of like, grandma's style of mentoring and may not necessarily be what they're looking for. I also think assigning somebody a mentor may not always be the best thing that one can do, because much like a date, there has to be some chemistry there. So we've heard a lot about mentoring at this meeting. Everybody knows by now, I've seen this slide in multiple other presentations, right? A mentor is someone who teaches or helps and advises a less experienced and often younger person. Why does mentoring matter? So if we look at that millennial generation, greater than 90% of them expect to be in their job less than 3 years. If you look at millennials who have mentors in their place of employment, those who are planning to stay greater than 5 years, 68% of them have a mentor. So I think mentoring is critical to retention. And I'm envious of the folks at Emory who have a greater than 90% retention rate. I know that the young people that have come to our practice, it's been a bit of a revolving door. There hasn't been much traction lately. And that, I think, is worrisome, especially as the job market is so hot right now. So we want to try to be able to do a better job with appropriate guidance. So there's a ton in the business literature, because clearly the millennial generation hit the business workforce before they hit the medical workforce, or at least at the physician level. So all these things, the misery of mentoring millennials, the modern mentor in a millennial workplace, finally things are getting a little bit more positive. Modern mentoring is the key to retaining millennials. And I think it's difficult too. You don't want to be too down and too generational, because they get a little bit, sensitive if you lump them into the stereotypes. So what is different about mentoring millennials? So as opposed to that, one-way street where the senior person is trying to bring up the junior person, it's really more of a two-way street for millennials. And that is a little bit of a break in the traditional paradigm, but something that's important to think about. So there's all kinds of mentoring. So there's reverse mentoring. And I'll give you an example from my own life, and I still consider myself kind of young, but anyway. I recently learned how to do a tweet chat from a neuroradiology fellow, right? I got an account when I went to a meeting. I didn't really do much more of it than that. And now I'm learning from this individual. So that's been really great. And so there's plenty of descriptions in the business literature where often the descriptors are around stuff like technology, right? Where the younger person really, is helping the older generation get more savvy with the tech that's out there. There's speed mentoring. So ACER just did a session at this meeting, which I thought was great. And it was literally like a 10-minute ring the bell, meet your next person. People are fine with that. This generation wants sort of quick answers. If they have a particular question, you're a good person to seek help with for this particular issue in their lives, they can do that. Micro-mentoring, so this is stuff like, very specific questions. Like I'm gonna go on, Facebook or Twitter or whatever and find someone who can answer this specific question for me. They have no problem with multiple mentors. You don't have to feel like you're cheating on the mentor or whatever. People are happy to look to different individuals who have different strengths. Group mentoring, so an example of this is like, a young faculty with a young family joins, and that person's going to find somebody else higher up in the ranks that has young children and is trying to juggle this work-life integration and the challenges that come with it. And peer mentoring, so they're happy to learn from their colleagues. So if someone in the organization is better at X, Y, or Z, they're happy to go seek that expertise from their peers. So there's a lot of different ways to mentor, right? There's Skype, there's Twitter, there's texting, there's Facebook, and there's the sitting down over coffee. So I think there's things that everybody can learn about that, right? I feel like my role sometimes is to sort of force them to sit down and have a coffee and look me in the eye when they're talking and, just relax for a little bit. And they've pushed me with asking me random questions over text that I'm like, we don't need to answer this at 9 o'clock at night right now, okay? So I've gotten better at learning to ignore some of the non-urgent electronic communications. And then the mentoring breakup, right? So, it's good to reassess the relationship, see if people are getting what they need out of it. Often people fret over, having to let them down gently. This really isn't working out. I wouldn't sweat it too much with this younger generation. Again, they're going to have multiple mentors. They don't have a problem with shorter term relationships. So, getting close to the wrap up here, our take home points. First and foremost, millennials definitely want mentoring. They want it more than prior generations. There are a ton of different ways to go about that, so be open-minded about it. Let them push your boundaries a little bit. The best millennial mentors are going to focus on results. They're going to communicate often, be approachable. So like Paul was saying, like when you're the new guy or gal on the block and you've just come out of training, like you're the cool kid, right? So they're going to be comfortable asking you things, but really try to maintain that approachable attitude even as the years go on. And really encourage people's passions. That's really the key to success, right? Is helping someone find what they're passionate about and be successful on that track. And happy to take any questions with the rest of our panelists. And thank you so much for staying to the bitter end.
Mm-hmm. That was a culture we grew up in. And even during residency, no one was ever done resident doctor so-and-so. And I've even seen people here, like, attendees, that still won't engage in conversation unless I engage them first, right? So how do we incorporate this without losing that respect of teachers? You know what I mean? Like, that's a very difficult dichotomy for me of understanding how we do like what you're talking about without losing that role of the physician.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I still think they're definitely aware of the difference in everybody's role, regardless of the title that they use. I've really not noticed I think it would be a lack of professionalism if there wasn't some acknowledgement of who's who in the equation, but I have not noticed that.
I agree with Anna. Even when I was a teacher, the students felt like they could interact with me slightly different, but they never really overstepped that boundary. And as the program director, I've not really had too many situations where they overstep that. So even though it's maybe slightly more casual, like I grew up in the South, like you did, for the most part, they don't really step over that. They still know there's a dividing line. Not so much. I mean, they are slightly more casual with you than they have been in the past, but they still know there's a boundary there.
A big part of that also for faculty, just because they have certain tendencies, I don't think we should see that as a sign of disrespect necessarily, right? I think we'd like to say that, if you don't call me Dr. So-and-so, that we've grown up with that as being
sure.
Well, the first thing I did was actually ask the faculty who wants to do it. So if they didn't want to do it, I didn't make them do it. Secondly, if anybody got overburdened, I put that on myself instead of someone else, so I took on more than everybody else did. But the way I matched them up, at least initially, was based on what I thought they wanted to do a fellowship in. So that kind of gave them an initial common denominator or common bond that they could discuss.
So we have the same issues. I agree with Paul. If someone is not at all interested in any kind of mentoring, you're just better off knowing that up front. And so you end up with a smaller pool. But the same is true of the potential mentee, whether that is a resident or a fellow or a junior staff. There's variable interest in how much people want to be engaged in that relationship, if at all.